whose own mission went from 8 days to 8 months. They're joined by 2 other astronauts as replacements who are set to return in February. CJ Papa, Fox News.
On Wall Street, stock futures are rising. On Thursday Night Football, the Los Angeles Rams beat the Minnesota Vikings 30-20 to kick off Week 8 of the NFL season. I'm Dave Anthony. This is Fox News.
Lawrence County depends on WDXE News. On the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
Hey, that's us, WDXE. It's time for Stan Pierchoski, and he happens to be here. How are you, bud?
Good morning, Jeff. I am
Bulletproof
here.
estate planning, that is, and with Pierchoski Law in Pulaski, Tennessee. And my sidekick on Friday morning.
That's right. That's right. Every morning from 8 to 9, we have this show.
That's right. So how you been, man? Been a whole week.
It has been a whole week. You know, they go so fast.
They do. They do.
You know, it's just every time I look, 2 weeks have gone by, and it's like, wow, it's fast. When I was a kid, I couldn't wait to be grown up. Now that I'm grown up, I would like to slow it down a bit.
Yeah, you and I were talking too just off the air. We're listening to the news together there, and the astronaut dudes that have been up there forever.
Yeah, they got stuck up. They got stuck up there.
Isn't that kind of an odd thing to get stuck up in space? I mean, goodness gracious.
At least they had a place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not ideal, but they had a place to be. So, but SpaceX was responsible for getting them back down.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah,
pretty amazing.
We've gone pretty far in that area.
Yeah.
So, all right. Hey, listen, we talking about estate planning, and want to remind everyone that this is a interactive show, call-in show.
Yes.
If you want to call in, feel free to. Any topic under estate planning, I'm more willing to field questions for. The number is 766. Is that right? Yeah,
766?
9393.
766-9393 is the number, yes.
Always got to stop and think if it's 766 or 2. But 766-9393, call in and ask a question, share an experience, just whatever. But to start off with, I always let folks know what's going on. And what's going on is I'm having my Franklin seminar, and that's going to be a week from tomorrow. That's going to be November the 2nd. It's up in Franklin. It's going to be a good one. We always get a pretty good crowd up there. I do a Nashville radio station, so a lot of folks hear me up there, and we get a lot of requests to have a seminar up there. And so we found a nice place in Franklin, and it's called Suite 501, and that's where we'll be. The seminar is called Wills, Trust, in the Nursing Home, and that's kind of what we talk about. We do kind of a quick review of will versus trust. Now, I always tell people if they want to hear more about like a deep dive into a will versus a trust, I have a seminar I do have a recorded version of it that I'm more than happy to share.
Okay.
Where I do just that. But on this seminar, this seminar sort of is kind of focused on folks that are concerned about long-term care.
Yes.
Ahead of time. And but the solution to long-term care or pre-planning is a trust. So I like to go over will versus trust to expose the audience to what a trust is and kind of what it does, the concept. But it is just a review of that part. And then that's what we do in the second half of the seminar. We move into the Medicaid aspect of life and in our state, TennCare, and the asset protection of people concerned about when long-term care may enter their lives for them or a loved one at such a catastrophic expense. The good news is that there is a solution to this problem. A lot of folks hear that for the first time, and I tell folks that come to my seminar, look, be open-minded. I guarantee you're going to hear some things you never heard before. Now, some people find that hard to take because they've been hearing things for years, and I guess if you hear it enough, it tends to become truth to you. That's not necessarily the case. So, be open-minded. I like to think my opinion is accurate because I base it. It's founded in law. It's founded in statutory authority. I'm very familiar with the TennCare Act and how crisis planning and TennCare works. So I like to think, when I tell you something, it's backed in fact, not just opinion or what Joe across the street said happened with his grandma, stuff like that.
Right.
And sometimes people come in and tell me a story about something, and it's almost completely opposite of what I say. And I tell people, I don't think I have all the pieces of the puzzle just yet. And almost every time when I start looking into it a little more and things start falling together, then it actually is the way I say, now that we understand exactly what happened. So it's a lot of good information, but be open-minded. You know, I say that because of this. I had I met with somebody, I think it was this week, and they're trying to get their dad to do some planning, and they say he's just as stubborn as an old goat, you know, just stubborn. You know, anytime he tries to talk about it, they say, no, they don't have to do that.
Yes.
Said, you know, if your mom or I go to the nursing home, you guys just sign all the stuff over to you. And he was saying, well, Dad, I was listening to this guy on the radio, and he says that's probably the worst thing you want to do if you're trying to avoid, and it is the worst thing. It's probably the exact wrong thing to do. I think the comment was, well, he's full of something or another. And I had to chuckle, and it's like, I understand, because what I'm saying runs completely counter to what he thinks or has heard, or, you know, I don't know if he goes on the internet, older folks not so much, but he's heard this misinformation for years.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Medicaid Act was passed 59 years ago, as of last July here.
Okay.
And we still, it's still not understood very well. I mean, not from necessarily people like me, but in general.
Sure.
It has fallen into this rut of information that everybody just keeps, you know, purporting the same concepts, and everybody just thinks is true. And a lot of it's not. And we're living proof. You know, we're just living proof of what we do with the clients that we get eligible, and the assets that we actually save for them. It's just, it doesn't have to be that way. So, like, you know, let's get over this concept of, well, I can't see how that could be because I've never heard of that.
Yes.
I have an in-law a step-in-law that has that attitude. It's like, well, I've never heard of that. I don't see how that can be. It's like, well, it's possible there's something you didn't hear about, maybe, that could be true, right? I mean, can we at least agree on that much? Mm-hmm. So, but, you know, and all the things that I'm going to propose to you are all work in your favor. So, I mean, you want to hear about them. You want to know about them. You want to know that they exist. So that's what we talk about. That's why we call it Will's Trust in the Nursing Home. Now, you know, it's only about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long, so it's not as deep a dive as it can be. Yeah. But it will give you, you know, the options that are available. And if you like some of those options, want to talk to me further, then we go further. We meet and we discuss, you know, your family dynamics and get a little more into the personal dynamics of the family. So that's the kind of way it works.
Sure.
So anyway, we have the seminar. It's at what I say it was Suite 501.
Right.
And it's got a physical address of that's the name of it, Suite 501. But the physical address is 416 Mary Lindsay Polk Drive, up in Franklin. So your GPS will take you right there, because I forget how to get to it every time. I kind of get almost there, and then I forget the last two turns or so. But it'll get you right there. And again, it's at 10 o'clock on the Saturday seminars. We do at 10 o'clock. I try to start as promptly as possible. You know, if I see several cars in the parking lot trying to get parked, I'll hold off a little bit. But then we start right pretty much at 10.
And the date again is?
It's November the 2nd, which will be 1 week from tomorrow. 1 week from Saturday. So
Not far away.
We'll be talking about it again next week, but we'll be right on the cusp of it. So,
right.
You know, if you want to come to it, call my office at Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law. The telephone number is 931-363-7222. All you really need to do, the RSVP process is pretty, it's pretty informal. You just call and talk to Miss Alex or Miss Tammy or Miss Courtney, whoever gets to the phone, and tell them you want to come. And basically just say how many people are going to be there. Say, if we want to come, it would be my wife and I, 2. Yeah. Okay. Or I'm bringing adult child with me, 3. That's all we need. And if you can't commit and just decide at the last minute, feel free to walk in. It happens every seminar. Yes. Every seminar we have some folks at the last minute can't come, and every seminar we have people at the last minute just pop in. You're welcome. It's okay. It's not that formal of a thing. You know, we're not cooking a meal for you and need to know exactly how much to give the caterer, right? We have some light refreshments, but if you're coming for a meal, then you're coming to the wrong thing. This is for information, and it's free and it's educational. I like to focus on the word educational, because once you know and understand options, your decision-making ability is enhanced. Yeah. I don't know how anybody can make a decision if they don't understand what choices are.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, kind of like an election in a way, right?
You need to understand the choices.
You got to be informed.
And understand the consequences of those choices.
That's right. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I get a lot of great reviews on these. People say I give them a lot of information, sometimes maybe too much. But I feel like it really needs to be that way, because it does sink in. Maybe not all at the moment you hear it, but it does sink in. Yeah. And then at the end of it, we do a question and answer session that I will stay. I think here we rent the place by the hour, and they kick me out about 1 or something like that. But it's over an hour and a half we have to answer questions.
Sure.
And a lot of people have the same question. I can see it because somebody will ask a question while the crowd is, everybody's still there. And then I can see people nodding their heads, and then they'll chime in on that question.
Sure.
They'll say, well, I had the same thing, but with just this one little difference or something. So
Right.
when we have the question and answer, people can glean a lot of information from that. Because what it does, now it takes a real-life situation, and I can connect that real-life situation with what I just talked about.
Right.
And how it actually applies to real life. And,
Right.
and you can hear and see the example as we talk about it. And it starts to reinforce what we just talked about.
Yeah.
And reinforce the fact that there's things we can do.
Yeah.
So, if any of this interests you, and not just long-term care, I mean, we do talk about that, but, even if you want to do what we call foundational planning, in other words, when I say long-term care, this seminar is really for you if you're worried that someday that will come into your life or a loved one in your family. We do talk about what we call crisis planning, which is planning at the last minute, but I don't get into that too much at the seminar because there's a lot of different strategies for that. And
Sure.
it would take a whole 2 or 3 hour seminar just to talk about crisis, but it does touch on the fact that there are several things available if you're already there.
Yeah.
So on that note, I mean, we actually this week, this is Friday. I want to say yesterday afternoon, got word that we got an approval on one. And this was one, I don't know if I mentioned it. Sometimes I mention these on the radio show that come back kind of messed up, which happens more often than you think. But we had a married couple and the husband was in care. And we applied, we got them all, we shifted the assets, pretty much put them all with the spouse and applied. And being married, they have special rules when you're married. We can shift a lot of stuff around. We have something called the Community Spouse Resource Allowance. Anyway, they came back, and they said they would approve, but they said the start date is the day they approved, which is completely wrong because the statute says it has to go back to the day of filing.
Right.
And then they also by looking at the assets that they talked about, it looked like they were treating him as a single person. And said he was over-resourced on this and that and the other thing. Well, these are things we transferred to the spouse. And so, anyway, we filed for a fair hearing because they got it way too wrong. And fortunately, this was a case, I'll give TennCare credit where it's due. Fortunately, this is a case where the caseworker was receptive to discussing our issues rather than waiting for a hearing. Sometimes when you file for a hearing or you go and say, look, I think this is not right. Can we talk about it? They're just going to say, you know what? I denied or I made my decision. If you want to appeal, you appeal. Because they're busy and they don't want to bother going back to one they think is done now, right?
Right.
This person was receptive to that. We talked about it. And we could tell they were kind of new. And so we were able to convince them, because we show them the statute and say, look, actually, we have their rule book. They have a manual.
Yeah.
And we say, look, let's turn to this page in the manual. Let's go through it. Let me show you exactly. I see where you're going, but let me show you exactly what we need to do.
Right.
And they were receptive to that, and so we did. And so they issued the approval yesterday and said not only is he approved, they went all the way back to the day we filed the application, which is what they should have done.
Right.
And the what we call the patient liability was right on the money. It was to the dollar, okay, that we estimated it would be, because the official liability comes out in their notice. Right?
Yes.
But before the notice comes out, a couple months, we have to pay the facility what's called the estimated patient liability. We can usually, figure it out pretty close because we use the same formula that they use. So,
yeah.
And so I think today I'll have to call the wife and let her know that if Miss Courtney hadn't already contacted her, I think she probably did. But give her the good news.
Right.
Because, when that happens and they come back with something that's not quite right and we got to go to fair hearing, that creates anxiety with the family. Because, we're sitting here from our side pretty confident we'll win the fair hearing because we know exactly what they did wrong and we know exactly what they should have done to do it right.
Yes.
So when we explain that in a judicial forum, that's the recipe for success. And we've always been successful. Now, but from the family side, I am sympathetic to the fact that it's like, okay, we did this, we went to all this trouble, and now now they come back with somewhat of an adverse response. Mm-hmm. And now they're worried. And I'm telling them, don't worry, we'll be successful in appeal, which I sometimes feel they don't take a lot of comfort in that. And I understand that. And I explained that to them. I said, I know that sounds like, okay, we lost and we're going to try to do this last-ditch effort, but please, trust me, we will be successful on this. We will get them there.
Yeah.
And the fact that they do this sometimes sort of looks like it reflects on us. It really doesn't, but it comes across that way. But in the end, we got them there. We got, when with this approval we got yesterday, I looked through it. I got everything I wanted in the first place. When I filed it the first time, this is what I wanted and this is what I expected. So I ended up with everything I wanted. Took about 5 months, I think, instead of 2 or 3 like it normally does. But anyway, it could have taken longer if that person was not receptive to discussing it, and we had to go to a hearing. It takes 90 days to get the hearing date, and then another couple of weeks until you have the hearing, and then another couple of weeks till the court decides, and it can really drag out. But either way, I was going to end up with what I wanted, and we did. We just managed to fast track it a little bit. So that's good news for the family. Hopefully, my thought process is that caseworker got educated on a few things, was not afraid to be educated on it.
Sure.
So when you talk to people in authority, and this is general, but you have to, if you ever do any of that, you've got to agree with me to some extent. You deal with people, and they just can be arrogant. And you want to talk to them about something, and you just want to discuss it. Say, listen, I think that this, the statute says to do it this way, and I think it wasn't done right. I'm not yelling. I'm not blaming. I'm just saying if there's a mistake, it needs to be fixed. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
If you got a problem, you don't point the finger. You focus on resolution of the problem. That's
Sure.
the only way to get where you want to be.
Exactly
If you want to waste
right.
time blaming, you're going to cause hard feelings. You're going to make people even more resistant to talk to you. So we just try to approach it. But more often than not, when you're dealing with the government, you get somebody that's just arrogant.
Well, it seems to be.
And I can't get anywhere with them. And if as soon as they show me that they're not really going to talk, I don't push it anymore. I just, kind of get in court and kick their ass that way. But like I said, we sometimes get a hold of folks that are receptive, and this one was, and it worked out very well.
That's good.
I would have gotten the same result if I went the hard way. It just would have been the hard way.
Yeah, yeah.
The long way. So that was good news for the family, and I'm sure we'll hear something relatively soon with your case.
Yeah.
It's
getting closer.
It's about that time. So
Yeah.
we're proud and we're happy when that happens. So we're living proof that it can be this way. These folks had quite a bit of assets. We managed to protect all of it. When you're married, we got a whole, like a second deck of cards we can play.
Yeah.
A whole lot more rules we can use to protect property.
Yeah.
When you're single, it's a little bit different. You're a little bit more limited because we don't have these things called the spousal impoverishment rules that we can use because there's no healthy spouse at home to keep from impoverishing.
Yeah.
And those are, we call those the community spouse rules, and they are very valuable. And we use them when we can. In this case, actually, it was a husband and wife. So, anyway, we talked some of that about the seminar, not in that type of thing, but we do kind of go over that because one of the things we talk heavily about at the seminar is a way to protect properties ahead of time using the asset protection trust.
Right. Well, we have our caller that has lots of ideas and thought, well, she left anyway. But I have something for you, maybe.
Great.
Maybe. Was with dealing with some folks myself. Well, she's calling back. Let's do this call, then I'll get into mine. Okay. Hey, good morning. How are you?
Yes, I'm going to hang up. But two things I read this week that I'm interested in. One said that in 2026, something was limited to $13 million, and I think this had to do with trust. But that it is now $13 million, but in 2026 it's going to change to $6 million, and it had to do with trust. But I couldn't remember if that applied to the assets or net worth or whatever. And I'll let you go. I just was curious about that and put it in language an eighth grader could understand.
Okay, all right. I'm not familiar with that at all.
I am, and again sometimes when you ask a question, it's probably not a good idea to suggest the answer. You know what I mean? Because it reinforces maybe a misunderstanding you have in the first place.
Yes.
So, but I know what you're talking about, and let me cover that. But it's a question, and she's exactly right on parts of it. We have something called the federal exclusion estate tax. Okay, which means it's the federal thing, not a Tennessee thing. If your estate is above a certain amount, you have to pay estate tax. And that tax is like 40% of every dollar above that amount. Now, over the years, it changes. Now, when Trump was in office, it got bumped up, and every year is at least a cost of living change, okay?
Yeah.
And right now, it's at $13.6 million per person. And you can tack those together for a married couple. So at death, if your assets are exceed 13.6 million, every dollar over that is taxed at, I think, at 40%. Okay. Now, I don't get too many states like that here in southern Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
But that's how it works.
Well,
okay?
I'm going to have to put some money somewhere then.
But,
I'm just
but
kidding.
that's right. That's right. Well, attorney's fees you can always pay, and that will lower your estate. So now what she's talking about is the law that did this is going to do what they call, I think they call it sundown in 2026.
Okay.
And so when it sundowns in 26, it's going to come back down. It's going to come back down. Now, what it comes back down to is still up in the air. There originally was talk about it coming back down to 6 million, but I have heard discussion that they're going to probably make it more like 7 or 8.
Okay.
So that's what they're talking. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's still going to be relatively high for the average person. Okay. But it has nothing to do with trust. I mean, if you pass away with a will or no will, if you exceed that federal exclusion amount, you're going to pay the tax, whether you have a trust or not.
Yeah.
Now, the trust we can tack. What we can do is at the first death, we can tuck away 13.6 if you're over it. We can tuck away up to 13.6 million in a certain thing called a bypass trust, and then at the second death, we can put a whole 13.6 in the second spouse to pass away. Okay. So we can tack them together and actually protect the 27.2 million if we.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's what that is. Now there's a thing called, I'm not going to get into this because this is heavy. It's called portability, and because we have 13.6 now, when that gets brought down to 6 or 7 or 8, we're able to use what it was because it was that way. While we created our trust or
okay.
our trust or a will.
So it's kind of grandfathered more or less.
Well, you
somewhat.
can take that and take some of it with you, portability, you know, and tack it on. In other words, if you're waxing the 13.6 million, it doesn't necessarily all go away for you when they change it back down.
Okay.
It gets very complicated,
Right.
and I'm gonna condition that with I don't do much tax attorney stuff. I kind of got to feel how those things work. And so I can give basic advice on that, but
So that's more of a tax
but,
question.
Yeah, well, it's more of a tax question because there's a lot of things you can do to get that portability. I know,
Yeah.
and so it's an interesting question. It's pretty heavy, but technically, most folks in our boat, or in here in Lawrenceburg and Giles County, it's not much of a concern.
Yeah.
If your estate is that large. And when people have business and stuff, that's you can make it that large and
Right.
stuff. If
Yeah.
you do,
You
you're
can get
going to need some financial advice because there's ways. If you're over that cap, there's ways to mitigate it. There's ways to defer it. There's ways to lessen the impact of it.
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
And I don't ever get into that stuff, but I always do ask if the estate is going to be a taxable estate. And I think I've maybe had one in the whole time I've been doing this. It seems if people have that kind of money, they go somewhere like Nashville and hire some very expensive people thinking they get better treatment or something. But, I deal mostly with what I call, normal people, the people that are industrial, people that entrepreneurs, people that, have their own little business like you and your real estate business. And, and they got decent estates. We just don't get that high.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to help someone right now.
Okay, great.
Who that I wanted to discuss with you, and I don't think they'll mind me discussing on the air. We're going to name names anyway, so.
Well, you can make it generic. If
Yeah,
you need to.
it's a husband and wife, and the spouse is completely disabled and has been for quite some time, and been taken care of at home, and evidently had some TennCare help. In some form or another, that has helped pay for assistance at home. Okay. And I think there's a category for that, but you're familiar with that.
Is he under 65?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right.
Anyway, some circumstances changed evidently, and she has some asset in the form of land that they're telling her that she's going to have to sell. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, so how. Or the benefits are going to end.
When you say her, the her is the patient?
No, that's the spouse.
The spouse is the her, and the husband is the...
Husband's patient.
Okay. All right, well, first of all, let me... is he... you said he's disabled, but is he incapacitated? In other words, he's unable to make his own decisions?
No, he can make his decisions.
Okay, all right. but he's disabled to the point where he needs help with
Everything.
activities of daily living and stuff.
Yes.
I got you. Okay. Well, he could have qualified for TennCare. It sounds like he did.
He did.
Probably for one of the waiver programs, they call it. It's our home and community-based
Yep.
systems. Now, there's two of them. There's assisted living, which, where you're actually in a place where you can do a lot of the
Right.
ADLs. The ADLs are the activities of daily
Yep.
living, but some of them you need help with.
Yep.
There's full-skilled nursing facility, which is what they call level 1. Choice is level 1.
Right.
Then there's level 2, which is the assisted living and home and community-based system. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, so if it's truly a home and community-based system, you can qualify for. They'll pay some money for you to hire people to come in.
That has been the circumstance.
Okay, and it's not a lot. It's like $1,500 a month. It's certainly not enough if you need it, but it's designed for people who. It's all based on level of care. Full-skilled nursing facility is the highest level of care because you need that care. As we get to assisted living, you need care, but not as much. Home and community based is like I need just a little bit of care, but not. I can do a lot of stuff myself, but it's good to have people come in, maybe do the laundry and the cleaning, or possibly do something with meals. But I mean, you pretty much can take care of yourself.
I think they
for
just
most things.
chose. They just chose to take care of him at home.
Now, the home and community based system, the eligibility criteria is very much the same as it is for long-term care. Nursing home, full-skilled nursing facility, where you have to be below your $2,000 of countable assets. You got to be income qualified. Those things, they're almost identical. Now, what they're telling him is once you get approved, they do a redetermination every year. In other words, every year it's like, okay, are you still eligible? Are you still eligible? And if something comes into your possession, like you inherit money or you win the lottery or something, that'll surface every year and it'll affect your eligibility because you really to be eligible for TennCare, you just can't own much. And I'm talking about the husband in his own right.
Right.
Well, now when you're dealing with a husband and wife, they're going to look at everything collectively.
Yes.
All right. So if I'm missing a piece of the puzzle where he's already qualified for TennCare. That would help me a little bit if I knew what that was at the time. Probably that home and community-based system. But
I'm relatively sure that's what.
And I'm suspecting that it's come up for redetermination is what we call it.
Okay.
And somehow this piece of land has surfaced. Okay. And I'm assuming the piece of land is not the primary residence.
No.
Okay. Now, the primary residence is treated special. So if you have a primary residence, it's a countable asset, and it kind of works against you, but it's an excludable asset. We can do something with it, and that probably was done the first time when they got eligible. But there's the other categories called other real estate. Anything not the primary residence is other real estate, and that is a countable asset that enjoys no exclusion, like that does. So that will be something that would over-resource him. Now, it doesn't matter if he owns it or she owns it, or if they own it. It's going to be considered a collective asset.
Okay.
Now, they'll have to do something with it because it's going to fall in the countable assets column for him. It's going to be it's worth more than $2,000. It's going to push it. It's going to over-resource him.
Yep.
And then the redetermination will fail, and he'll lose his eligibility because of that. I mean, it sounds like what's going on.
I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Now, the question is what to do with the asset. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me ask one more question. Who's telling her to have to sell the land?
Evidently, whoever she's dealing with TennCare. Really don't know.
Okay. What they're probably telling them is they have to spend down. That's usually the term used, but when you're talking to TennCare caseworkers, they have their own vocabulary. But the solution is probably relatively simple. Since he's married, there's such a thing as the unlimited spousal transfer, which means he can transfer all his right, title, and interest in that piece of real estate to his spouse and do so penalty-free and do so with the stroke of a pen. And now it's not his anymore.
Okay.
And if it's real estate, it just requires a deed. And we do that before the redetermination is due. Then we send the redetermination in, and they say, what happened to this piece of property he owned? We don't own anymore. He gave it to his spouse. Oh, he gave it away? Yeah. Is that a penalty period? No, because the spouse is one of the few people you can give property to and not be penalized. And so from what I know from the facts, that would be the solution. Transfer it to the spouse. And because technically what we do is we transfer everything that's over-resourcing the patient to the spouse. These are the spousal impoverishment rules. this is exactly what they're for. We just literally transfer it all. Now, what I don't know is there's a couple ways to transfer. We have something called a community spouse resource allowance, which is right at $154,000 plus some change. Don't know if they already have assets transferred for their qualification the first time to do that. But if you didn't, and the property will fit in that amount of money, we can transfer it under that resource allowance. If not, we can just literally deed it to that person.
Okay.
That would do two things. One, if you have any indicia of ownership at death, so if the patient, the husband, passes away with any ownership. Now, this usually happens with the house, okay, because the house gets taken out of the eligibility calculations because it's excluded, or exempt is another word for it. But the person still owns it. They're just not using the value of the house against them for their eligibility determination, okay? But if the person passes away, and still owns it with the wife as right of survivorship, they have passed away with some ownership indicia in that property. That's what triggers a state recovery, which is when they come after the property after death. And they will come after that. So in this case, if this person will assign everything, all their right, title, and interest in that, whatever that piece of property is, to the wife, then at his death, it escapes a state recovery because it all resides with the spouse, which is exactly what the spousal impoverishment rules are designed to do. Keep the spouse from becoming impoverished because you're in the nursing home at the tune of $9,500 a month, sucking all the finances out, being a black hole of expenses, and you spending the money that the healthy spouse would have to live off of. So the spousal impoverishment rules allow us to do that so that she has the wherewithal to live. So that would be my suggestion. There's probably a couple more details associated with it, but if that's all it is,
And I may be missing some pieces of the puzzle just yet.
But when you're a married couple, we literally just transfer it all to the spouse. That's how we protect it, because the husband can't own much.
It appears at first glance that the property is only in her name. Now, I don't know. So I was kind of confused a little bit about why they're having her sell that property.
Well, that question is twofold, and that is when not knowing how I got qualified before.
Yeah.
But let me just present this as if we're back in time.
Right.
Okay. Usually when a husband and wife, and one of them needs to be made eligible, made qualified, we will, the way you look at assets is there's no mine, his or hers, they're all ours.
Yes.
So let's say we back up the first time he's trying to qualify.
Yes.
They're going to look and say, well, what do you own, husband? He says, I own this. Well, that's available for your cost of care.
Okay.
What do you own, wife? Well, I own this in my own name. Well, that's available for your husband's cost of care.
Okay.
And what do you own together? Well, we own this as a collective asset. Well, that is also available for the husband's cost of care. Everything there's, if a husband owns it in his own right or a wife owns it in her own right, that does not shield it from the other spouse's care.
Okay.
It is a marital collective unit.
Okay.
There's no mine, there's no yours, it's all ours.
Okay.
Now, so we do that. And then we do this community spouse resource allowance where we technically take all the assets together, divide it in two, and say this goes to the wife, this goes to the husband. Now, this is a paper division. We're not like cashing everything out and putting it on the table. And so then we don't look at the wife again. Now that's hers, and now this is his, and there is no ours.
Okay.
And we look at him and say, okay, what are you over-resourced? How much do you have over your $2,000?
Yeah.
And usually what we can do to make him eligible is take everything that's over the $2,000 and either assign it, give it, or somehow transfer it under some of the several mechanisms we have to the spouse.
Okay.
And that accelerates his eligibility. Now, if that was done, now that she has this piece of property only in her name, it shouldn't be a concern. But when you've told me earlier that they're telling her she needs to sell it, that makes me wonder what got done in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know that. So.
But it can be. There's a solution to it, whichever one it is.
Sure.
It might just be the argument and say, look, it doesn't matter to you because he's already.
Right.
He is not over-resourced. And at this point, after the first approval process, after he's already been approved, and apparently was at some point, now you don't look at the spouse ever again. They can win the lottery, they can win $1 million in the lottery. It has nothing to do because now everything is his and hers.
Right.
But the fact that somebody's telling her she has to sell it, we need to get all those facts nailed down to give the solution. But whether she needs to sell it or whether or not, well, she needs to sell it. I mean, if it's just in her name, then there's nothing for him to assign to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I suspect
It's a little bit of a mystery
I suspect the
at this
advice.
point.
I suspect the advice is probably not good advice. Telling her she has to sell it.
I wondered that myself, but
Was it recent? Was it acquired recently? Since
No, this is no,
if it's something they've had for a while, it was probably dealt with on the first
Probably.
go around.
probably so.
And so again, if somebody's telling her to do that, it doesn't necessarily make it the truth.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it the right thing to do. It
Well,
makes it what they think they should do.
I guess because of our meetings and meeting with you, it has made me wonder, like, okay, are we really doing the right thing for this lady here?
Oh, selling the property.
Yeah, because so it's really made me question whether or not she really has to do this.
Well, let's take it a little further. What that does for my mind is, if you sell it, we haven't really changed anybody's position. She now has the cash value of the house.
Well,
right?
see, that's what's going to happen, and that's what they're describing is going to happen. Is the cash is then going to be eat up in his care?
Well, what care is she paying for? He's not in a facility, right?
No.
I mean, so what care does she have to pay for?
Yeah. The in-house help that comes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, then if it's because TennCare only pays like $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
And let's say she has to pay $5,000 a month because, if you have 24/7 help in the home,
Yeah.
that's more expensive than the nursing home.
Well, that's true.
It's more than what.
And that may be more the case.
And if that's the case, they're just electing the private pay.
Yeah.
And they need the money.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with TennCare, because if TennCare is telling them to sell the house, they're saying you need to sell the house to pay the nursing home or the nursing facility.
Yeah.
He's not in one,
Yeah. No, he's not.
so it can't be the reason why somebody suggested
Interesting.
it. So it couldn't even be TennCare suggesting it, really, unless it's something that came up on the redetermination. These are the kind of Sherlock Holmes things that happen all the time. We'll ask some questions, get some more information on it, and we can ferret it out. We can figure it out what's going on with on that case.
Yeah.
So maybe if they want to give us a holler and we see what we can figure out. But
Yeah.
we got to get all the facts and find out what went on, because the procedure is the procedure. And once we know what road they went down, what all was done, I'm pretty confident we can come up with why they're asking her to do that.
Well, it has certainly made me ponder, because I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I'm really doing the right thing for these people, or they're doing the right thing if there's a way for them not to have to do this.
And I assume their wish is not to sell it.
Well, they feel like, from the way I understood it, they don't feel like they had a choice. They need to do this. So
Again, if they're
and
private
it
paying,
may be that they're private paying and just electing to do that. I'm just beginning to handle it, so we'll find out. I may call you myself.
I mean, you got a client, and that's what they want to do, and,
Yeah.
and you may. It happens to me sometimes. If somebody wants to do something, and I say, look, I'm going to advise you that I don't think that's the best thing you should do. Here's why, and they still want to do it. I'm pretty much bound to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm supposed to be an advocate at some point and discuss it with them and give them my opinion.
Well, the thing about this is, of course, you and I both, and I know this just from my time with you, you want to give them the best advice you can.
That's exactly right.
And I'm in the same boat. I want to give them the best advice about what they want to do they can. But having known now what I know from talking to you, I'm wondering if this is really right for them.
Well, I think they ought to have it analyzed to find out what the options are.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And if they
think
still
so,
want to
too.
sell it, then they still want to sell it. But
Yeah.
at least now they're selling it, knowing what all the options are.
Right, knowing
That's-
exactly
yeah.
what's going to happen. That's right.
But if you come to me with the facts, I got to have the facts. I mean, I can't have the story with
Yeah, there's some holes that I'm
hit and miss.
not sure.
And I'm sure they can fill them in, and that's what'll help me get to the end,
Good deal.
because I got a feel for how it might have went to end up with a result like
Yeah.
that. So.
Of course, it's a little bit different too, that you got someone that's being taken care of at home.
Speaking of at-home care, when you hire people to come in to do some cleaning, some laundry, stuff like that, help with that.
Right.
That's one thing. But if somebody needs like full-skilled nursing facility care
Yeah.
or 24/7 care, that's more expensive than the nursing home. Around-the-clock people coming in and say 8-hour shifts, 3 8-hour shifts a day for 7 days.
Yep.
It's more than the $9,500 you pay the nursing home.
Yeah.
So it's very expensive to do that. So, I mean, you can elect to do that, but you're going to be expected to pay for that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because everything we talk about is shifting the burden to the state of Tennessee, which is what you're supposed to do if you go into a facility. I mean, that's what the program's for. I mean, it's almost a requirement that you shift it to the state. That's what the whole program is geared around.
Right.
So if you go into a facility, you're supposed to do this process, shift the burden to them, and they'll pay the bill.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the program's for.
Interesting.
But if you elect not to go there at all in the first place, then none of these rules apply. It's just like you're purchasing a service. And even if you're going to purchase a service, you're not going to get it unless you pay for it.
Everything has to be paid for.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So
Everything has to be paid for.
there's no free lunch.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still amazed, really, I guess, when I think about the amount of government services from top to bottom in every aspect that you can think of, and how much money flows through our government. In paying for just, almost anything and everything you can think of.
I mean, the numbers are staggering. If
They're
so staggering, they really have no meaning when you hear them.
Yeah.
You hear a number that's got nine zeros behind it. It's like you can't conceive that much money.
Well, we all grew up at a time when if someone said $1 million, that was a whole world full of money.
Oh yeah, that was.
And now they throw around $1 billion here and $1 billion there. And then multi-billions, and we're in trillions of dollars. And it's just, like you said, it's almost like it's completely lost its meaning.
And, it's one thing about a debt is it always comes due.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, but we won't
It
get
is
into
a
that
problem.
because we can
It
go
is
on
a
forever
problem.
about that. But, it's the government programs, unfortunately, like in this situation, we have to deal with them.
Sure.
With long-term care. Again, though, don't misunderstand. You can elect to stay home, and a lot of people like that would do what we call age in place.
Sure.
But if you need care, you got to give it to them. Now, while we're on that note, let me just bring this up because there's a potential problem or something you should be aware of if you're going to keep somebody at home.
Yeah.
If you elect to keep somebody at home and forego all other help, in other words. So I'm going to keep dad or mom at home, my spouse at home. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm not going to ask TennCare for help. I'm going to do it myself. Okay. So if you do it at the exclusion of anyone else, you're going to be held to the standard of the care that they need, not just what you can do. In other words, sometimes I hold my hands like this and I say, "This is the care they need." Mm-hmm. So that's the care you're expected to give under the law. If you can only give something less, that's not a free pass. Here's an example. You say, I'm going to take care of my spouse.
Yes.
Okay? You're in the same age bracket as your spouse, technically, right? And so the spouse falls, and you can't get them up for whatever reason. You're not strong enough, or they're big and heavy, or you just cannot get them up.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're on the floor for a long period of time. Of course, that always causes some other issues, right?
Yeah.
And you call 911 or somebody to come and help. That can be a problem because if you're doing it at the exclusion of everyone else, then you're going to be held to the standard of care that the person needs. And if you say, "Well, I'm sorry he was on the floor for 12 hours. He's just too heavy for me to pick up," that is not an excuse at this point. Then you get somebody there that can pick him up. That's what you're required to do because you're choosing to take care of this person. And if your level of care is not enough, we have criminal statutes that they don't exercise much, but they're there.
Wow.
And it's abuse. It's abuse because the person's not getting the
And
care they need.
you wouldn't think about it being that because you have someone who cares for somebody, they want to do their best, but their best may not be adequate.
And that's right. Now, what you're required to do, if you can't do certain things, because especially if with spouses, sometimes when it's adult children taking care of them, they're pretty capable of doing stuff. But if you're going to do it, it's something you can't do, you're going to be expected to hire somebody to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can't do the laundry, and somebody gets sick because they're sleeping and wearing soiled clothes and bedding all the time or something, the excuse is, well, I'm 70 years old myself and I can't do the laundry. Then if you're taking care of this person without excluding everything else, all the government benefits that there are to take care of them, then it's like, okay, then you need to hire somebody to come in and do the laundry because the laundry needs to be done because that's just part of the care.
Sure.
So there's an expectation. You can, I hear where people just say, I'm going to do it myself and just stick it to the man,
right.
And I don't, stay out of my business. And I don't write the law and I don't always agree with it, but they are out there. Yeah. Now, they don't get exercised much. Well, the only time I've ever seen the criminal statutes get exercised is when something's pretty egregious.
Right.
A case comes to mind where somebody did fall and they had a broken bone and they were on the floor for like 3 days. and the person
Oh, my.
would come feed them on the floor.
Oh, my
And it only
goodness.
got found out about because I think somebody, like a guy delivering a package or something, saw something that made him make a phone call. And so
Yeah.
they go and they find this out. I mean, pretty egregious.
Yeah.
And that's like totally, you got to admit, that's totally unacceptable. That's not care.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not just circumstances. And the whole argument was, well, I can't pick him up. I couldn't do it. So I just did the best I could.
Yeah.
And so just be aware of that if you're going to decide to take care of somebody at home. And if you got the wherewithal to hire, then do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you don't, which most people don't, you're going to, then they need to be in a facility getting the care they need.
Right.
Care they need is the number one goal.
Right.
Don't fall short on that.
All right, hang on just a second here. Hey there. How are you this morning?
Yes, this is relevant on both sides of my family right now.
Yeah.
One side has already spent over $200,000 in less than a year keeping a husband and wife in their 90s at home. Another side, without going into detail, I hope nobody knows, there was a fall, and I was wondering if, now it's taken care of, there's no question, but they finally just had to say, I've got to take you to the hospital. If you can't help me, I have no choice, because the patient, an older patient, was begging them not to. Is
Right.
there a time limit? And this doesn't affect them, but I was just curious. Is there a time limit which is considered respectable when the patient is begging you not to? But anyway, just thought I'd throw that out. I'd like to hear questions on that.
Wow. Well, gosh.
Well, I don't know what I can say about the first.
Yeah.
The first thing about spending the money on the 90s, couple of 90s at home, it sounded like that's what they elected to do. And if you elect to do it, the cost is the cost.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way, but that is a way to do it.
Yeah.
The second one, I mean, I'm not familiar with any time frame. I mean, those things are usually, if something happens to somebody,
Yeah.
it falls under, it's a tort sounding in negligence.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and negligence is always governed by what they call a reasonable person standard. It's like, what would a reasonable person in the same situation have done?
Yeah.
Now, it's a tough call. I mean, you got somebody, let's say it's a relationship, your dad, or a family person, and they're saying, do not take me to the hospital. Do not take me to the hospital. Well, they're laying there with a broken leg. I mean, if they're laying there with a broken leg and the bone is sticking out through the skin, with a compound fracture, I mean, maybe it's a little clearer call. It's like, you know what? You are not making good decisions right now. You have a broken leg. You're probably in shock.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to the hospital. Your reasons to not go to the hospital, going to the hospital outweighs you're not wanting to go there because you don't like the place. Those things have to enter in. Like, why do you not want to go to the hospital? Well, I don't like the smell, or I don't like this. But, or now if it's something really strong, like I have these very, very strong convicted religious beliefs of not going there, that makes it a tougher call, stuff like that. But at some point, a decision has to be made for the best interest of the person.
Yeah. Many people have faced these kind of circumstances and situations. We have our very selves. With my father-in-law, there came a point in time. Teresa took excellent care of him, and we did. But we finally got to a point where we had to make a decision that he needed a higher level of care than we could provide 24/7. And you know what? As hard as that decision has been, he seems to be thriving. And actually taking good care of.
Well, that's good. There's the old saying, a labor of love.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the word labor is in there for a reason. Don't forget that. It is a loving act to do that, but it is by no uncertain terms a labor. Taking care of people.
And people who have done it, and there have been many who have, know that it's just it is a labor of love, and you do it out of love. But there comes a point when it's beyond what you can do.
And I admire people that do that and have that commitment. I mean, that is, there's a lot to it. It's not just as simple as, I'm taking care of Dad at home and that's it. I mean, it is.
Well, it's not only a physical toll; it's an emotional toll.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
It sure is. So
and again, sometimes people will say, I want to keep my wife at home. I'll never put her in a nursing home.
Yeah.
And I can almost say, well, I can tell you exactly when she's going to go into the nursing home. She goes into the nursing home the day her care exceeds your level, your ability to give it.
Yeah.
Then they go in. Nobody wants to go. I mean, it's not like we line up and check ourselves in so we can play Parcheesi with the guys.
This is all about making the best preparations that you can.
That's right.
For the things that could happen. And that's what this is.
That's right.
This has been about.
I often say I'm in the what if business a lot of
That's
times.
right.
And so you know, and sometimes I even get surprised, and I can what if stuff pretty good. I can really what if them, and even sometimes I can sit back and say, "Man, never saw that coming."
Well, hey, I meant to ask you, changing the subject slightly.
Sure.
I want to ask you how the play is going.
Oh, okay. We're 2 weeks from opening night today.
Yeah.
And
How's the play going?
Starting to get a little nervous.
Yeah.
I told you I was building the car.
Yes.
I transported it into the theater on Wednesday night because I had to take it in on my trailer and parts,
Oh,
put it
my
back
gosh.
together again. And we were up on rehearsal and something already broke on it. So it's just, so we're doing that. We're 2 weeks from opening night. We're packing in a few extra rehearsals because we got the whole thing together, but we're fine tuning stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to end up in it. We had somebody that had to not be there anymore. Some family situation came up, and it was very late in the process. And we thought about recruiting. We couldn't find anybody, and the only solution seemed to present itself for me to step in. I mean, it's a lesser role, but it's one of the T-birds. But anyway,
Yeah. And
so I did. So if you're wondering why my hair is as long as it is, I was right about the time to get it cut when we decided I was going to do that. I said, well, I'll just let my hair grow long so I can be a greaser.
All right. Sounds good.
But yeah, that's coming up. I was supposed to bring you a flyer. My wife's out of town for a few days, but I left it on the desk. But it's the 8th, 9th at 7 o'clock, Friday and Saturday is the first weekend, and we do a 2 o'clock Sunday matinee. And then the following weekend, Friday and Saturday, which I think is 16/16
Yeah.
at 7 o'clock, no matinee that weekend. But Grease, or what we call Golden Grease.
Golden Grease.
Everybody in the cast is at least 40 and up. So, again, my seminar coming up November the 2nd at in Franklin, Suite 501, 416 Mary Lindsay Polk Drive. Starts at 10 in Franklin. It starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. Called Will's Trust in the Nursing Home. If you want to come to that, call my office at Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law at 931-363-7222. Go to estateplanstand.com at my website. There you can see the calendar. You can get the email and ask a question if you want, or you can call me with a question or get signed up for the seminar. So if what we talk about interests you, by all means, give us a call and we'll talk about your individual family dynamics.
Absolutely. That phone number again, of course, Stan's office is right on the square in Pulaski. Not hard to find at all, next to the Star Theater there. An easy place to find. Beautiful square over there, a lot of activity always. And
Oh, yeah, always something going on.
the phone number there again, 363-7222. And that website is Estate Plan Stand. Don't want to forget that. That's
estateplanstand.com.
easy to get to right there.
Yes.
Stan, always a pleasure. I guess we'll see you next Friday.
We will. And next Friday, it'll feel like a week went by.
That's right.
We're always here from 8 to 9 on this show, and we always have fun doing it.
All right, man. Thanks, you, buddy.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye.